The suspects have huge teeth, a flat multifunctional tail. They are true natural engineers, and they're being accused of felling a lot of trees out there. Already know who we're talking about? Yes, exactly, the beavers. But despite their fame as the lumberjacks of nature, these animals hide many curious secrets that few people know. From giant species that lived during the Ice Age, to highly adapted body parts and environmental invasions that changed entire ecosystems, these and several other fascinating facts about them are exactly what we've gathered to show you in today's video. Masters of dams. And to start our list, let's talk about the fantastic constructions that made beavers world famous and a true symbol of engineering, their dams. After all, it's no coincidence that they're often described as real engineers of the animal kingdom, because using only a few basic materials and their building skills, these animals are able to build dams so large and solid that they change the course of rivers and create entirely new ecosystems. It all begins when beavers choose the perfect spot for construction, usually a stream with a constant current. After that, they start their work by gathering materials like logs, branches, mud, and stones, which are dragged to the construction site and used to form a solid structure capable of holding back the water and creating a small, artificial lake. Inside that lake, beavers then build their lodge, also made of branches and mud, but with a brilliant detail. The entrance is always located underwater, which prevents land predators like wolves or bears from reaching them. While inside there's a dry chamber lined with plants where beavers sleep, care for their young, and take shelter during winter. Simply fantastic, right? Cutting trees. As we've just seen, few animals have as visible an impact on the environment as beavers, and this doesn't only refer to the aquatic areas they completely transform, but also to the surrounding forests. Since logs and branches are essential materials for the construction and maintenance of their dams, beavers simply cut down entire trees to get them, often creating scenes that at first glance seem negative or harmful, similar to the deforestation caused by humans, with fallen trunks, open clearings, and devastated riverbanks. And indeed, in some regions, the intense activity of beavers can alter the ecological balance, reducing the density of certain tree species and changing the structure of the soil. But interestingly, this kind of deforestation also brings certain benefits. By felling trees and blocking watercourses, beavers create new wetlands that become refuges for birds, fish, and amphibians, functioning as small ecological stations that help filter sediments and increase biodiversity. In other words, what at first appears to be pure destruction is often just a different form of reconstruction. However, in urban or agricultural areas where beavers share the same space directly with humans, the impact is different, as the falling of trees near roads, crops, or properties can cause damage, often requiring the control of their population. Versatile tail. Among all the beaver's impressive features, few are as distinctive as its tail. Wide, flat, and covered in scales, this tail, which can be described as a truly versatile tool, has a unique shape among mammals and plays an essential role in the life of these animals. While swimming, the tail works as a powerful rudder, allowing the beaver to change direction with precision and maintain balance even in strong currents. On land, it serves as support and stability, helping the animal stay upright while cutting trees or carrying branches, almost like a third leg. But its usefulness goes beyond movement and balance. The tail also acts as a natural fat reservoir, storing energy that the beaver can use during the cold months when food is scarce and energy expenditure is higher, a vital adaptation for the survival of these animals. The largest dam in the world. In a remote region of northern Canada, within Wood Buffalo National Park, there is an impressive construction made entirely by beavers. It is the largest natural dam ever recorded, measuring about 850 meters long, the equivalent of nearly 8 football fields. What's most fascinating is that, although it isn't invisible to the naked eye, this structure lies in such a remote and inaccessible area that no one had realized its true size until 2007, when it was finally identified through satellite images analyzed by a researcher. It is believed that the dam began being built in the 1970s, and that several generations of beavers have contributed to its continuous growth, since these animals often inherit old structures, reinforcing and expanding them over time, which explains why this incredible work is still constantly growing. Holding their breath. Beavers are animals that spend most of their lives in or around water, and because of that, they have developed extraordinary adaptations for diving. Proof of this is that they can hold their breath for more than 15 minutes, something rare among land mammals, and it's an essential ability in their daily lives. Yeah, I know you're probably wondering right now, okay, but how do they do that? The secret lies in their highly adapted bodies. To begin with, beavers have proportionally large and highly efficient lungs that allow them to store a significant amount of air before diving. Another interesting detail is that beavers also have nostrils and ears that automatically close when they submerge, preventing water from entering. And finally, during dives, they are able to slow their heart rate and redirect blood flow to vital organs, a strategy that prevents energy waste and allows them to stay underwater for longer periods. Adorable kits. Family life is essential for beavers, and it starts right at birth. Females usually give birth to 2 to 4 pups after a gestation period of about 3.5 months. And the most interesting part is that these little ones are born with fur, open eyes, and teeth, although during the first few weeks they stay inside the lodge, kept warm and protected by their parents. When they reach about 1 month old, the young begin practicing their instinctive swimming skills, and by 2 months of age, they are already able to help with small tasks. Since the behavior of building dams is instinctive for beavers, they are biologically programmed to perform this task from birth. However, these youngsters continue living with the family for up to 2 years, which allows them to perfect all the skills they need to survive before leaving the group to form new colonies. Infinite teeth. Maybe you, like many people, have that image in your mind of beavers with 2 huge teeth on the upper part of their mouth used to gnaw on trees. But contrary to what many might think, beavers don't have just 2 front teeth. They actually have 4 incredibly powerful incisors, 2 on top and 2 on the bottom. Orange in color due to the high concentration of iron in their enamel. And besides being extremely strong, they never stop growing. For that reason, throughout their entire lives, beavers must constantly gnaw on wood to wear down their teeth and prevent them from growing too long, since if they didn't, those teeth could reach a size that would make it difficult to eat and even injure the animal's mouth. So the next time you hear the sound of a beaver gnawing on wood, remember, it's not just an instinctive behavior, it's a matter of survival. Instant alert. Remember when I said that the beaver's tail is one of the most impressive and versatile tools in the animal kingdom? Well, it seems the surprises related to it aren't over yet. When a beaver senses a threat, it uses a very efficient strategy that involves slapping its tail against the surface of the water in a quick and precise motion, producing a loud, unmistakable sound that echoes across the pond. This warning can be heard over long distances and works as a collective alarm system. So when other beavers hear the signal, they immediately dive underwater and hide safely in their lodges or beneath the surface until the danger passes. Giant rodent. Even though it might not seem like it, beavers belong to the same order as rats and squirrels, since, like those animals, they are rodents. The only difference is that beavers sit at the top of that list when it comes to size, holding the title of the second largest rodent on the planet, right behind the capybara. An adult beaver can measure over 1 meter long, including the tail, and weigh more than 30 kilograms. And this robust build is no coincidence, as that large muscular body is perfectly suited to their semi-aquatic lifestyle, providing the strength to cut trees, drag logs, and swim with stability. Limitless instinct. Beavers were born to build. There's no denying that. But what about when they're far from nature? Does that instinct still remain active? And the answer to that question is yes, since today there are plenty of fascinating cases that prove it. For instance, there are situations where beavers kept in rehabilitation centers, or even as pets at home, end up trying to build dams indoors using whatever they find around them: clothes, blankets, and even toys. Truly amazing, right? But it does make you wonder, do these animals ever take a day off? Dangerous work. Every job has its tough parts, right? Here on the channel, for example, we spend hours researching, writing, and editing to always bring you the best content with real and interesting facts. So if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to help us keep creating more videos like this. But when it comes to dedication and hard work in nature, probably no other animal takes it as seriously as beavers do. That's because, although they are truly skilled lumberjacks, these animals can't fully control the direction in which a tree will fall. And when a tree falls the wrong way, these poor creatures sometimes end up becoming victims of their own work, being struck or even crushed by the trees they cut down. To avoid that, many beavers use a clever strategy. They stop gnawing from time to time to sense when the trunk starts to crack, giving them a few extra seconds to move away safely. Engineer couple. In the animal world, few relationships are as stable as those of beavers. That's because these rodents are monogamous, forming pairs that stay together for many years, or in some cases, for life. Another very interesting fact about these animals is that they live in close, loyal family groups, functioning like a small, organized, and cooperative society, in which each colony can include up to 12 members, consisting of the pair, their offspring, and the young that haven't yet left the group. Symbols of Canada. Every country has an animal that represents its identity. In the United States, it's the bald eagle. In China, the giant panda. And in Canada, That role belongs to none other than the beaver. It all began during the colonial period in the 17th century, during the so-called fur trade era, when European settlers arrived in North America. At the time, the fur trade was the region's main economic activity, and since beaver pelts were the most valuable of all, they were exported to Europe and used in the making of fine hats, turning the animal into one of the pillars of the Canadian economy in the 17th century. Over the centuries, the beaver went from being merely an economic resource to becoming a national emblem, and in 1975, it was officially recognized as a symbol of Canada's sovereignty, appearing on coins, coats of arms, and even the uniforms of government organizations. Healthy diet. After so much hard work cutting down trees to build dams, it's only natural to imagine that beavers have a diet based on wood, right? However, that's not exactly the case. These rodents don't feed directly on the wood of the trees they gnaw to build their dams, but rather on the bark and inner layers of the trunks. They also eat leaves, buds, and aquatic plants, a simple yet surprisingly balanced diet. Distinct species. Although the beaver is a well-known animal, not everyone realizes that there are two different species spread across the world. The American beaver and the European beaver, both almost identical with orange teeth, flat tails, and an incredible instinct for building. But despite the similarities, they have a few subtle differences that allow them to be told apart. The American beaver lives in North America and is slightly larger, with a more robust body and a more cooperative nature, usually forming larger and more active colonies. The European beaver, found in various regions of Europe and Asia, is a bit smaller, has a longer head, a narrower snout, and lives in smaller, more reserved groups, being less likely to share territory with other beavers. Imposter fish. Even if you don't follow any religious tradition, you've probably heard of that old Christian rule of eating only fish on Good Friday, avoiding any other kind of meat. But what many people don't realize is that, at one point in history, the beaver was also considered a fish in that context. During the Middle Ages, the Catholic Church enforced strict rules about what could or couldn't be eaten during Lent and on Fridays. According to this logic, red meat was forbidden, but fish was allowed. So, what to do when there wasn't enough fish for everyone? Well, I have to admit I wouldn't know what to do in that situation, but for the Catholic Church, the solution was to classify the beaver as a type of fish, and the justification came from its way of life. Since it spent most of its time in the water and had a wide, scaly tail, the beaver appeared, in the eyes of religious authorities, to be closer to fish than to mammals. Thus, eating beaver meat was considered acceptable during the Church's religious fasts of the time, serving as a substitute for fish in several regions of Europe and Canada. Yeah, I guess it's just like the saying goes, right? Every rule has its exception. Uncontrollable beavers. They have adorable offspring, extremely valuable fur, and can even be eaten as if they were fish. Thinking that way, it seems natural to imagine that any country would want beavers living in its territory. However, their presence isn't always beneficial to the environment, and the story we're about to see is a perfect example of that. In 1946, the Argentine government imported 20 beavers from Canada and released them on the island of Tierra del Fuego at the southern tip of South America, with the simple idea of promoting the fur trade, which was profitable at the time. However, that plan went completely wrong. Without natural predators and in an environment full of ideal rivers, lakes, and forests, the beaver population exploded out of control. From just 20 individuals, their numbers grew to more than 100,000 within a few decades, spreading throughout the region and even crossing into the Chilean side of the island. As a result, the beavers began cutting down native trees, flooding forests, and altering entire ecosystems, leading both Argentina and Chile to create eradication programs to control them, since they are now considered an invasive species and a serious threat to the biodiversity of Tierra del Fuego. Natural waterproofing. Living in the water requires more than just swimming skills. It takes a body built for it, and beavers, as true specialists in this regard, certainly haven't overlooked that detail. That's why they produce their own natural waterproofing, which keeps their fur dry even after long dives. This effect comes from an oily secretion produced by glands located near the base of the tail, which the beaver mixes with saliva and spreads across its body, using its paws during grooming. The result is a protective layer that repels water and maintains thermal insulation, even in very low temperatures. Giant ancestor. Long before modern beavers ruled rivers and lakes with their dams, North America was home to a much larger creature, the enormous and impressive giant beaver, as it's known today, which lived during the Pleistocene period and could reach over 2 meters in length and weigh more than 100 kilograms. What's most fascinating is that, despite its colossal size, it retained the same basic anatomy as modern beavers: large teeth, a flat tail, and a body built for swimming. However, unlike its modern descendants, the giant beaver wasn't an engineer, as current evidence suggests. It didn't build dams, but instead preferred to live in wetlands, such as swamps and lakes, feeding on aquatic plants and soft branches. Removing dams. For beavers, building is instinctive, but for humans, dealing with those constructions can become a huge challenge. The reason is that, in many regions, the dams these animals build make the water rise so much that it floods roads, invades farms, and even causes flooding in residential areas. When that happens, both authorities and local residents need to act to remove these dams, which on a smaller scale can even be dismantled manually, though it often takes hours of hard labor. However, in some cases, these structures become so large and solid that they must be removed with the help of tractors or even excavators. And what's most fascinating is that, even after being removed, these dams are often rebuilt within just a few days, thanks to the beavers' strong instinct to block running water. As soon as they notice the flow returning to normal, they start building again, giving the local population more work to do. And you, do you know any other interesting fact or curiosity about beavers? Share it with us in the comments. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching and see you next time.